This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Released on Sunday, September 7th, 2014, This Agile Life, episode 61. I'm still being a jerk.
Our sponsor tonight is CodeShip.
CodeShip is continuous delivery made simple.
Try CodeShip for free.
Setup only takes 3 minutes
At codeship.io.
The software industry transforms more and more every day. Agile methods are quickly replacing traditional ones. The question is, are you agile enough? This podcast is devoted to agile and lean software development. Time to welcome your agile coaches on This Agile Life.
Hello, everyone. I'm the host of This Agile Life, John Sextro. Joining me today are my co-hosts, Craig Buchek.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Craig. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks. I missed you guys.
We missed you. Also joining us tonight, Jason Tice, the Agile Factor.
Good evening, John. How we doing tonight?
Doing great. Looking forward to a rousing and ruckus conversation with everyone.
Actually, rousing, ruckus, and most importantly, it will be respectful at all times.
Very good alliteration. Finally joining us over there in the center square, Amos King.
I'm not the center square on my computer.
I know, I just wanted to call you the center square, though.
Oh, circle gets a square. Isn't that where the most famous person went? That's what I think.
No, that's where the Joker is.
Oh, the jerk.
That's where they put the bully.
Well, that fits.
It does tonight because we're going to talk a little bit about bullying in the workplace, and Jason's going to tell us a story. But before you do, Jason, how does this tie into Agile?
Well, so we kind of teased this on our last episode where we talked about retrospectives and really what to do. And one of the things that we agreed to put in our parking lot was specifically saying, well, what happens when you have that person in your retrospective that kind of disqualifies themselves from the process? So they say, you know what, the retro or the action that comes out of the retro, it's not relevant for me. And we kind of alluded to that was like they kind of play the jerk card and they say, you know what, I'm a member of the team, but at the same time, I'm not a member of the team, which I think all of us have experienced at various points in our careers working with Agile teams. And so the idea here was to let's pull that out of the parking lot and discuss that, because I think that's a real life problem for a lot of people. Does that make sense, John?
It does. And I mean, it's not limited to Agile, though, right? This is just across the board kind of bullying in the workplace. So
the completely out of the box metaphor that I threw out there in our kind of our prep notes for the show was I had a scenario recently at the infamous kindergarten open house where we had the, all the kids showed up. I have a kindergarten kid, which that's a whole other story about Agile in kindergarten. But nonetheless, I have a kindergarten child, and then I also have a preschooler. And the preschooler was on the playground, and somebody else's kid came over, and next thing you know is kind of like, beating up on the preschooler. And my wife and I are sitting there watching this, and we're like, well, what do we do? We're sitting there kind of like, I want to use the term responsible team leads, kind of observing and coaching our teams or our kids. And now we have this other kid, which is kind of outside of our scope. What do we do? Do we intervene and ask the kid to stop, beating up on our preschooler? Or do we, and effectively discipline someone else's child? Or what are the options? And so to me, like, our preschooler was being bullied, and I took a step back and I said, this happens on self-managing teams all the time. Some new person shows up and says, hey, I don't agree, that's wrong. And, they might be passive aggressive. And what do?
What did you do?
I guess to close the kindergarten story out and get us back in the Agile world, we went over and we kind of told the kid that, well, you really shouldn't, beat up on our younger child, because obviously there was an age difference involved. And so he was responsive to that coaching, and we did that in a constructive manner, so we didn't reprimand him. So we just asked him to not do that. And of course, then we observed, again, what happens on real life on a lot of teams where, 5 minutes later, he's doing it again, because he effectively, and, kids are interesting because they like to get attention. So he detected that he was getting attention by causing our preschooler to really, have a fit because he was kind of, beating up on her. And so he liked that. And he was motivated by that reaction. And again, I've seen this on teams where, someone has passion and they say, oh yeah, I'm really going to, dig into my team members today and get them motivated. But what they don't realize is that activity of trying to get them motivated may have detrimental aspects to other members of the team.
So I think this is a problem that's obviously not unique to Agile, and it's not even unique to work environments, as your story points out.
It's a people problem.
Right. So my first question is there even an Agile aspect or an answer from the Agile community that doesn't fit, non-Agile communities as well? And the only thing that makes me think that Agile might have any difference is the fact that we attempt to be self-managing.
I agree.
So I think the Agile aspect that we can talk about is going to be about self-managing in that instance. But I don't know that that's always the answer. Sometimes Agile does not have the answer to a particular problem. And I think a lot of the case here is going to be the same. It's pretty much what you would do in any situation in job, and you try to solve it yourself, and if you can't, you take it up to management. But the interesting Agile part is, what about self-managing?
So what are the rules of the playground then, I guess? And if anything, if we use the playground as a metaphor, that is kind of a self-managing ecosystem, where you've almost got, the kids are out there playing and they're trying to, figure out if they're being social, they're collaborating, and in some instances, maybe they're collaborating too much and beating each other up. And then you've got, again, like, I'll take a step back, like myself as a bystander. In that self-managing environment, Craig, what should my role as a bystander be?
So I would say that in that situation, after you talk to him the first time and he didn't stop, maybe you would go to the teacher, a teacher, management, a principal, except for then I have to channel Jason Tice and say, but what if the kindergartners don't trust the teacher? Because then you have that issue. We got to start talking about trust problems.
But what's unique about this is, again, this to me is interesting because it's almost like a work environment where you've got your self-managing teams that really are focused on the development of the software, but then sometimes the business isn't fully integrated with those teams. So it's like we've got, I'm there as a parent at open house night, and then we've got, other parents that are there too that aren't as involved in really what's going on and effectively supporting the self-organizing effort at an appropriate level.
Well, and you're very much a manager as a parent there. You're not. And you have that same problem in the workspace. You have some managers that are really involved and some that aren't.
Okay, but so let me ask you this then. In a self-managing work environment, aka the playground in our story here, whose responsibility is it to maintain the safety of the environment for all the people working in it?
Everyone. That's what self-managing means.
So if you take it out of the kindergarten playground metaphor and move it into the real-life work environment, you would hope that if there's a bully, that the team will self-organize and self-control or act in a way to control someone who is a bully. What I think is difficult, just as it is on that kindergarten playground, is to be the first one to challenge the bully and call their bluff and say, back off, your behavior is inappropriate for this situation.
Yeah, but what's unique about it, John, is that with kids, and I know eons ago we had Karen Vavaza Spencer on, who's the retired kindergarten teacher who's become an Agile coach from the Boston area. She talked about one of the great things about kids is they don't have a filter. So real life on the playground, my preschooler was like, screaming because she was being bullied by this other kid. In real life, a lot of times people on a self-managing team, they feel obligated, just like Amos, they feel obligated to have a filter, unlike Amos who doesn't. So try to pull Craig's comment in here. But that creates risk because sometimes people, they're afraid to raise concern and they allow themselves to get into this non-safe working environment, which doesn't have a good outcome.
I have a filter.
Only around
bullying. If I didn't have a filter, I would have gone up to that kid and said, "Look, everybody, Johnny peed his pants." Now you got your attention.
So Amos, let's try to take a step back here. Let's say if we're talking about my metaphor here, I intervened and then I do something to. Is that really productive? So like I'm leadership and I represent management. So I come in and I don't know who this kid is. This kid's from some other team and I do something to shame him. If anything, I harass him. I don't think I'm helping the scenario.
No, you're not. You're being just like he is.
Okay.
Yeah, that never helps, right?
So real life scenario, like, okay, you're on a team. Try to get this back to, something that's not quite kindergarten, or we're going to start a Agile parenting podcast. We'll do that next. Is you're on a team. You've got this person who really doesn't like working with you. Maybe you've had conflicts in the past, and yet because of the nature of the organization has asked you to work together. So what do you do if you feel that somebody is, being disrespectful to you?
Let's give a concrete example. Let's say that the bully in this case is going in and...
Lee McCauley.
Wow. I'm telling.
I think he picked someone that was unlikely to be a bully.
So now Lee can come on the next episode. He can go on a rant about violating the whole team approach by talking about people behind their backs.
Amos, you need to go sit in the corner. You've been bad. Let's give an example. A person on the team thinks that their code's always better. Their implementation of something is always better than someone else's. And so waits until code check-ins happen for the day and then hangs around and takes, what someone on the team has done and changes it to the implementation that they want it all along.
I think I worked with that jerk.
Right. So that's
okay.
That could be a form of bullying, right? How do we as a team respond to that?
I usually try to bring it up individually, like go pull them to the side, talk to them quietly, calmly, where nobody else can hear. I'm not calling them out. I'm not bullying them back. I'm just going to discuss it with them and say, hey, what's going on? That, I think, is the first step, always.
Right. I agree. Any conflict, the first step, unless there's some reason it's unfeasible, is to talk to that person individually.
Okay,
yeah.
but
or walk away.
But let's take a step back. So suppose I'm this person who I see that my code is constantly being refactored because someone doesn't like me on the team. Okay, and I see that, and I feel that's threatening. So you're asking me to stick my neck out and to go talk to this person, Amos. If I'm, someone who's introverted, I'm not comfortable, that's going to be really hard for me to do, to go have a one-on-one conversation with you since you're being aggressive.
And unfortunately, I have to say to you, sometimes you're going to have to do hard things in life. And it's not always going to be easy working with other people.
Pineapple.
So sometimes you're going to have to step outside of your comfort zone. And,
I think that's an excellent answer, Amos.
Okay.
And that sucks. I don't like stepping out of my comfort zone either.
So real life, let's talk about what happens there. Because what I see happen a lot is, okay, I'm the guy, and again, not true to character, but I'm Amos. I am very intimidated by you. So there is no way that I'm going to go and have this one-on-one discussion, which I personally agree could generate a positive outcome. So I'm just not going to do that. So instead, I'm going to go to someone else, and I'm going to start to have a conversation about, Amos, I really don't get what he's doing. I'm trying. I know I'm the new guy on the team, and I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to pair. But every time I commit something, he refactors it, and he doesn't even put it through code review. He just does it, and it's bothersome.
That very much depends on who you go to. If you go to somebody who has the authority to fix the issue, then I think it's okay. If you go to some random other person and you're just complaining, that's gossip. And I think that you are just as liable for the situation as the other guy, and you should be fired too.
Well, so a couple of things, Amos. Let me ask you first then. If I'm the person who feels as though the term I'm going to use is the work environment is not safe, okay? So I'm a member of the team. You are doing things that make me feel not safe in the work environment. Number one, who should I go to? Describe that person.
Either some management person who can go to them or some HR person, but you should not be going to Joe Schmo on another team just to complain. You need to go to someone who can fix the problem.
Okay,
and that's very dependent on the situation.
Okay, number two, what I want to ask you.
If you are unwilling to speak to somebody to fix the problem, then you should speak with your feet and find a new job.
Okay. Well, then number two, let me ask you another question is, once this person who's, again, they don't feel safe, so then they go to someone else, as you just suggested, what should that person do to intervene?
That's going to depend on what the problem is.
They're in the same situation as you too now. You've drugged them into it. Now, are they comfortable enough to go talk to that other guy? Maybe. Are they comfortable enough to talk to HR or management? Or are they just going to continue to spread the gossip around to where it's not he treated you like a jerk, but he punched you in the face in the parking lot by the time it goes through 150 people?
I don't think this is necessarily gossip. I mean, it's certainly...
It gets there.
It's certainly one person's side of the story, but it's somebody that's trying to go to enlist the help of another member of the team. If I'm uncomfortable doing it myself, I go and try and enlist someone to help me broach the subject, broach the topic.
That's why I said go to somebody who can do something about it.
Everybody on the team can do something about it.
I would agree. In my example, I said someone on another team.
Hate to immediately take this to HR. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
We're going to have everybody in HR offices all across the country with, he changed my code check-in.
Yeah, because I was going to say, Amos, I think there's a bunch of things where by immediately, and we've had this discussion before, we had it like back in, it was like in the May 2014 time period. It was the infamous discussion about having the private meeting, which... I think that, again, if the person is comfortable having a one-on-one conversation with the person who is creating a non-safe environment, I think that could be highly productive. I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't comfortable having that discussion. But I think there's a lot of things the team could do almost to prevent this whole scenario from happening in the first place. So I ask a question I ask you guys is, when was the last time you were on a team that did a safety check and actually did something to measure if all of the team members felt safe working in the team environment?
I do that regularly at retrospectives.
So when you have that safety check, do you do it within the constraints of the retrospective meeting, or do you do it within the context of being a member of the team?
I think I've only asked about in the team area like once or twice, and it's whenever I noticed that there were issues.
Yeah, see, what I would do is I would say the whole idea of a safety check, which again, it is a recommended activity in a retrospective to start the retrospective to ensure people feel safe continuing. I think there's an opportunity to apply that to the team environment itself and really have people check in and really say, do we feel safe working together here? And to do that in an anonymous fashion, where if they do not feel safe, they can voice that, and that concern is known to the group, and then the group can decide what to do about it at working as a team.
I think it's still hard to have a safety check out in public, especially if safety has been breached, in an unsafe way. How are you gonna bring up the topic of, well, let's have a safety check, knowing full well, right, Jason? If I know full well that someone's safety has been violated, and now I bring up in a team setting, not saying anything has happened here, but I just want to do a safety check with everybody to make sure we're all safe. And who's going to, if the person's uncomfortable, are they going to go, problem, Amos shaking his beverage in front of the microphone is an unsafe behavior. I'm calling him out right here. I was uncomfortable with it before, but now since you wanted a safety check, I'm going to speak up and say, I feel unsafe.
John, I'm really sorry that happened. Sometimes I forget that we're recording a podcast and not just hanging out around the table.
So it sounds like the word we want to use here, and I don't know if we'll have to bleep this, is pussyfooting around the topic.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Please.
I mean, so let me try a little story here, since I happen to learn about Craig's got a car that goes really fast, and there's a story supposedly that maybe when he was test driving it, he went out on the highway and he drove it really fast. We can wonder if that's true or not. But
it wasn't on a highway.
Okay, but what I want to say is, Craig, if you are the operator of a vehicle that goes really fast, there's a certain set of constraints or just things that if the vehicle has call it a flat tire or it's out of alignment, you're not going to go drive it really fast. And you're going to have feedback before you put yourself into a non-safe environment that you're going to react to. And what I'd like to challenge teams out there to do is to, as a team, build a system that someone is capable of saying, you know, I don't feel safe in this environment and I want to raise the flag. There's a pattern out there, a technique. It's called a stop work authority card. And I've seen teams use this where everyone has a little card that says stop. And as a team, since they're working together, they have a working agreement that says if anyone on the team at any point in time does not feel safe because of people issues or what they're doing, they can raise the stop work authority card. They actually will pull the card out and throw it up in the air. And that's their signal to say that, hey, as a member of the team, this is something we need to discuss and figure out so we can be effective as a group.
Okay, as the timid guy who doesn't want to go and bring up anything, are you going to go pull that card?
So the issue is, it's one thing for me, Amos, to go to you one-on-one and have a discussion about something that you are doing one-on-one. So I come into work the next day and I'm like, what the heck? What did Amos do last night? And everybody's there at stand-up. And I pull that card out of my pocket and I show it to everyone, including you at the stand-up meeting, and be like, guys, I don't feel safe. I don't feel respected. We need to do something about this. And I'm going to do this in the presence of everyone else because, yes, Amos, I may have a conflict with you, but I'm hoping that I have some support from the other members of the team.
All right, two things. One, if you have a flat tire, you don't need a safety check. You've already identified the problem.
Okay, low tire pressure.
Two, if you're uncomfortable with confronting that person directly, you're probably not going to want to confront them in front of a group either. So, I mean, either of those are probably okay, but actually it's more confrontational to do it in front of the group than to do it in private with that person. So I would still recommend, in any situation, go talk to that person first if you can. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, that's fine. Then step two is probably talk to somebody else with some authority to change that, whether that be a manager or someone else on your team. I mean, remember, a self-managing team means that everyone can exert leadership at any time. And on the best teams I've had, we've pretty much grown everyone into a leadership position, and anyone was able to lead and to address a problem like that.
Well, it's specifically what I would say, Craig, is that like the idea of a stop work card is designed to facilitate that, because a lot of times if someone is more soft-spoken, you know, they may not be comfortable to, you know, to your point about saying, hey, we need to talk about this. But again, it's this act of having a card as a signal that, to your point, it enables them to step up and be a leader. And again, if you're a member of a self-managing team, it's part of your job description to lead and guide the team when needed. If you don't feel safe, you need to do that.
You can ask someone else on the team to be a mediator without causing it to just be gossip. The problem I had with the example earlier where you were saying going to someone else is that, to me, it sounded like I'm just going to someone else to complain about the issue. And if you're just complaining, you're gossiping, and you're wasting time. You need to go to someone who can fix the issue if you can't do it yourself.
You know, one of the things that I think is the problem with playgrounds in general is that there are no ground rules that have been established other than like Lord of the Flies sort of ground rules that get established as pecking orders are established out on the playground. If we set up a team where we have some ground rules that we've established, where we've established the stop work authority card, where we've established that there are certain behaviors that we're not going to tolerate, and we all agree that we're not going to tolerate as a team. These are things that then empower us to self-organize in the future, because now we've established that we want to have a self-organizing team, we want to have a self-governing team, and we are saying to everyone, you have the power, you have the authority, you have furthermore the responsibility that when the team gets off the rails or individuals on the teams get off the rails in one way, shape, or form, that it's your job, it's your responsibility to play the stop work authority card, to call that person on the carpet, you know, at the next stand-up. And everybody is on the same page because they were all there when we made those working agreements. And so safety has already sort of been pre-established, and then that allows us, when an unsafe condition occurs, to easily react to it within an acceptable set of boundaries.
Yeah, and John, what I want to draw attention to with what you just said is a key element of the story that got this all started, is that there are certain efforts that need to be executed to come together and form a team to maintain the safe environment. And what I'm describing here, this was kindergarten open house night where all the kindergartners showed up and then a bunch of other siblings showed up. And it was organized, maybe I should say disorganized chaos on the playground. And by that nature itself, since that environment hadn't been defined, it was a non-safe environment. So if you have teams like that, don't do that and really invest in working agreements so the environment can be safe. Go ahead, Amos.
Well, I mean, thank God that we are not Lord of the Flies, land of the playground. But like one important thing I think is that make a rule that anyone on the team can call a retrospective at any time, and then they can do that anonymously. They come in before stand-up, they print out on a piece of paper that says, we need a retro, and they hang it up, and you go in the retro, and everybody writes down on an honest piece of paper what they want to talk about. And you write on there, Amos is a jerk and rewrites everybody's code every night. And maybe you don't use jerk because you're a lot nicer than that, and you're really wanting forward progress instead of just being a jerk yourself, too.
Yeah, the other thing that I recommended that, Amos, maybe as a different way to achieve the same outcome, is to, since you mentioned gets to work early and is able to do that, that might not be feasible for everyone. So throw a Pandora's box in your team area and let people submit to it anonymously whenever they need to.
There are also anonymous email clients out there that you can just email the whole team anonymously.
Or usually your facilitator for your retrospectives is hopefully someone not on your team, and you can email them and hopefully trust them enough to, say, hey, I'm having a problem with this, and I'm not comfortable bringing it up myself, but I'd appreciate it if you as the facilitator would bring it up. And that's worked well for us. We've actually had both for our facilitator on one team, where you could email the facilitator or you could hang up a note in the little area next to the Kanban board.
So let me ask this other question. This is kind of a pivot in the discussion to say that, okay, we've gone through our retro, we've had our one-on-one conversation, we've thrown the stop work card, we've done something to raise awareness for the problem, but nothing happens. That person, Amos, you still continue your persistent behavior pattern, maybe because it's the way you naturally act. So what happens over time?
Okay, before Amos answers that question, let's give him some time to think about and formulate his response. And I'd like to tell you guys about our friends at CodeShip. CodeShip's back sponsoring our show. And guys, CodeShip is continuous delivery made simple. CodeShip is so simple to use, you can get your project set up and building in as little as 3 minutes. I spent a bunch of time this weekend, over the Labor Day weekend, getting some of my tests refactored and building even better than before, and I'm so pleased with the service. If you're not using CodeShip, you're spending more time on continuous delivery than necessary. And our good friends at CodeShip, they won't even ask you for a credit card when you set up your free account. Get out there, set up your account on CodeShip. What are you waiting for? Maybe you're worried that you'll run into some problems getting started, but fear not, because our good friends at CodeShip will help you out. You can email them, talk to them on Twitter, or you can check out their blog at blog.codeship.io. They've got a ton of great examples, excellent suggestions for getting your code up and running on CodeShip. Few things in life are easy, but this is one of them. Let CodeShip make continuous delivery simple for you. Go and visit codeship.io/thisagilelife and use the code thisagilelife when you sign up, and you'll receive a 20% discount for 3 months on any paid plan. Thanks to CodeShip for sponsoring This Agile Life.
Flo and Manny, I love you guys.
Yeah, they're great.
They will give you respectful feedback.
They will. They're good guys.
So what are you going to do about the situation, Amos?
Well, I'm still being a jerk, is what he told me. So
how would you respond in that particular situation?
The discussion we always get in is, trust or continued bad behavior. And how do you deal with continued bad behavior? You eliminate it. You fire the person, whatever you need to do, because it just keeps building poison on the team. I would like to be able to have another conversation with them, but conversations only go so far, and at some point you have to cut the cord.
And this is where I think, Amos, to your point, this idea of what it really means to be a self-managing team is, I think, largely, the term I use is it's half understood. Because we're really good at saying, okay, we're going to figure out, here's a group of people that we're going to figure out how to work together and be effective. But a key element of that is ensuring you have the right people on the team for the team to be successful. And sometimes you have someone that doesn't align. And really, for self-management to be effective, really you need to talk about how teams are formed, and then also how a team adjusts and maybe how a team disbands if somebody doesn't align.
I would love to deal with a company who the teams hire people to work on their team and they choose who to let go from their team, maybe through an anonymous vote if need be or something. But I think that is a self-managing team, because I've seen too many companies where someone from another team interviews somebody to go onto your team. And then you have to deal with the repercussions of this jerk that doesn't get along with anyone on your team, and you can't let them go. So if you really want a real self-managing team, I think you need to take it to that extreme. Yeah, and I think that would be amazing just to see what would happen.
Yeah, and to be fair, there are, I know the term that some use is the unicorn organizations out there like Spotify that do this, and that Spotify has its whole guild system, which has been pretty well documented how it works. And they do that to really almost to what you're describing. But let me ask you, Amos, well, let's set reality in here. What if you're not at that bleeding edge environment where you could do this? Is there an incremental step to get some benefit without going to true self-organization?
I don't know. I don't know what that incremental step is. After you've already had a discussion, where do you go from there? You go to management and you say, get this guy off our team. He's causing problems. Most of the team can't deal with it. And we've already discussed it with him on 1, 2, 3 occasions. How many times do you want to do it before you say, this guy's got to go?
What if we start by creating like a green light, yellow light, red light board?
Yeah.
Like in kindergarten.
They do that. Yeah. It's Class Dojo. There's a product that does that for kindergarten.
I hate Class Dojo.
Well, okay.
And wait. And the psychological studies that go along with things like Class Dojo say that they don't work and that it's bad.
Well, so put it this way. I saw Class Dojo, when I saw it in real life in kindergarten, I was like, okay, that's Daniel Pink, Carrot and Stick, which is bad and doesn't work. But that's also...
We should explain Class Dojo. Class Dojo is when you're good, the teacher can give you a point. And then some schools have like drawings based on points or whatever, different ways. Some of them allow them to spend points. Some of them use them as tickets in a drawing. That's what my kids did. At the very end of the year, they gave away a bicycle. And not give it the most points. Every point counted as a ticket in a drawing.
So the worst kid could have won the bicycle.
Out of every class, a bicycle.
Okay, so that Amos has described Classroom Dojo applied in an interesting way that would give you carrot and stick motivation, which is not good.
Kid has 20 points. My kid has 1,000 points. Guess which kid doesn't care about his behavior anymore?
Well, so let me explain what they're doing, I guess, in my kid's kindergarten class with it, which I thought was interesting. And then I threw a rock. Well, I threw a wrench at it that my wife thinks is crazy, but it happened nonetheless. So the teacher, to your point, Amos, gives out the points, where it's simply good point or bad point for the day. So if you're doing something that's good, you get a thumbs up, you turn green. And if you're doing something bad, you can take the point away and it makes a noise and the kids hear this. The teacher had also set up where she leaves the dashboard up all day. And at that point, the kids can go up and they can give themselves points to really self-recognize that they're doing things right, that they're proud of. Okay? Well, the dashboard's up all day, so one day on the way to the bus stop with my 5-year-old, I was like, well, why didn't you go up and give points to other kids in the class that you think are good? So she went and did this. So effectively, it becomes a self-policing system where, if Amos, you're acting like a jerk and I don't like that, I can go over and I can give you, the points down thing. That to me could be effective. That's kind of like giving someone the safety card.
So maybe till they go give themselves points.
I don't think you're allowed to give yourself points, though.
Well, I think it's interesting that we're doing that in kindergarten. I don't know where that's going because I think what's cool is, hey, the console's up there. Amos, if you did something that really helped me out, I want to go do something to recognize for you that. So I think that's great.
Also, what I see, maybe when you get like everybody policing like that, that's great. But what I've seen with when you have like a management or authority figure, the teacher giving points out for good behavior, is the kids that are normally in trouble all the time get the most points because every time they do something nice, you give them a point to try to reward them. And the kids that are always good end up with no points because they never stood out in classes as needing it. So you have a tendency to give the kids that are often in trouble more points whenever they do something good.
So if carrot and stick doesn't work, what does work?
Yeah, well, I see a huge potential to use something, and I know we have teams. I work for teams that they track the happiness metric really at the person level. I think there's a way to use something even as simple as Class Dojo to make a dashboard for your team. And I think with some policies, again, okay, the team lead or management can't give out points. You can't give a point to yourself. But if you want to recognize another team member that does something well, you have a system to do that. And by that nature, if you think there's someone who's causing the team pain or causing you pain, you could go take a point away from them to create a feedback loop so something happens.
So what I found being effective is remove finger pointing. You're not allowed to talk about somebody else, but you empower words and allow change to happen through words. This works with children and it works with adults. Is you don't take complaints. You take, I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that, not John did this to me. You don't accept that. You accept, I need this, I need that. And then you respond to, I need, not to all these other things. And it works fantastically for kids. It works fantastic on teams where I've seen it implemented, that no finger pointing and talk about yourself and what you can change or what is bothering you and what you need to fix what's bothering you. And then you have lots of people on the team saying, hey, you keep changing everybody's code. Why are you doing that? And they discuss, they ask why, because maybe there's a reason. And when you empower with that words are powerful and that real change can come from conversation, then a lot of these problems melt away.
Asking questions also helps. Like, hey, why did this get changed? Like, and come at it like not an accusatory, but hey, am I doing something wrong? Or, someone else doing something wrong here?
And when somebody comes to you with that, a lot of times it's also good to say, to like agree, like show them, say, oh yes, I understand how you're feeling. It's not saying that they're right or they're wrong. I understand how you're feeling. Here's a scenario in my life where I felt the same way. So that way you make a connection and then here's how we're going to fix it.
So Amos, what I'm hearing is, and really to go back to that initial discussion we had about having that one-on-one conversation with the person who's causing pain or creating the unsafe environment. Really, it's this opportunity to have a very clear conversation and apply some very simple kind of, I'll use the term discussion or self-facilitation techniques like the 5 whys. So Amos, I see that you changed my code last night. Tell me why. And then you answer. And then, okay, well, tell me why you did that. And you go through that 5 times. And if you're the person who doesn't feel safe or feels bullied, you're not having to come in with a lot of information. And if anything, by using this more open discussion technique, you're going to learn more about what's going on.
And you may find out that you should have changed your code. Or you may find out, or he may find out, I've been doing this to everybody lately, and it's probably not good.
You just blew my mind.
Uh-oh.
My code did suck?
or the other one that's a great questioning technique from really clear questioning is just to ask a question, and then after it's answered, ask the same question again.
Ask it differently.
Well, actually, some of the researchers showed it's better to ask it the same way.
Really?
It's interesting because sometimes you'll hear, put it this way, you'll hear if there's a real problem there, you should hear the same thing twice. If you don't hear the same thing twice, we should try this on the podcast actually, then it probably shows that person is full of themselves and making a mountain out of a molehill, and truly they are being a jerk.
I do this with my children.
By the way, you can be a jerk by re-asking the question, especially if a woman asks the question and everyone ignores her, and then a man asks the question, and then all of a sudden it's a valid question. This is a real thing that happens, so don't be that kind of jerk. All right.
Well, yeah, but let's talk about that one. So
we should have a separate podcast for sexism in programming instead of this one.
Yeah, I think we should probably invite someone to talk about that since we're probably not very expert at that.
Okay, so if you're coming attraction, since obviously we are talking about the jerk topic, which was previewed on the last episode of This Agile Life, coming soon to a future episode will be this fun discussion.
Sexism in the workplace on Agile teams.
I forgot what I was saying now. I got sidetracked by Craig's sexism comment.
But again, real life, a lot of times, if you think about what the legal protocol is if you have a hostile work environment, this is where Amos, we can have a reality check because there is this thing called laws that govern how we operate a business in many countries, including the United States. So law dictates certain policies, which again go right to things that we kind of said we want to try to avoid before. We want to promote individual conversation between the two people who have the conflict, which again is good, but understand specifically for incidents where there is a hostile work environment, you should not do that, and you should do whatever the law and whatever company policies are in place for how to report those incidents. And I think that's a good thing to point out because, again, if you have a hostile work environment, which could be defined as a gender issue, then that should go through whatever that policy is, and you should take this self-management we have with a grain of salt.
I still think we should try to talk because I have been on the receiving end of hostile work environment issues and going in and telling the person, hey, look, you're making me uncomfortable and you need to stop. And it ended.
So, yeah, my advice is always, if possible, go to the person offending, then go to the next level of management up, then next up, and then HR, if there's no management to go to. If you don't get any progress quickly, you need to escalate quickly, too.
Barring, I'm going to kill you in the parking lot comments. There are certain, comments that people are making it. I'm not talking to you one-on-one individually, right?
Yeah, because that's not safe.
Right, exactly. So, barring safety, you should always try to go talk to them.
But I guess just to be fair, the law does provide certain protections that if an organization does not provide those protections to staff members who feel they are a victim of a harassment incident or a hostile work environment or a quid pro quo, then the organization can be found guilty of neglect. So what there needs to be, and Amos, to your point, is there needs to be the discussion at the team level with that. But if someone goes to HR to raise a hostile work environment complaint and they say, go talk to the team first, then that, again, if that's a true complaint, any good attorney out there is going to say, hey, you can raise suit against the organization for not protecting your rights.
So I may not know enough about all of this, but I think unless there's some law against it, the HR department should try to be a mediator before going to, okay, this person's fired. Unless, again, life threats or sexual threats, anything
Jason,
that is.
We weren't saying HR should reject your request because you should always go talk to the person first. We're saying talk to the person first if that's possible and then go to HR. Well, and if you've gotten to HR, they shouldn't take you back down the ladder.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And or guess what? If somebody doesn't, again, for whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel safe talking to the person first, and they elect to go to HR or to go to the Ombud system, then that system needs to execute in accordance with policy and regulation. And at that point...
So you're arguing against people that aren't arguing the other side of the point here.
Well, I'm just saying, to be clear with basically what we're talking about here, is that we want to ensure that in certain circumstances, as we're talking about for harassment, be it sexual or quid pro quo, there are laws, and then again, they vary by locality. So if you are listening to us all over the country, it makes sense, or world, it makes sense to know what the laws are in your locality, and then understand how your organization has embraced those, and really know how, if you have self-managing teams, what the organization's preferences are for how, if there is a hostile work environment or a harassment incident that occurs within a self-managing team, how should that scenario be adjudicated within the confines of the organization?
No differently than any other team, I would think.
And we are not lawyers, and we are not offering legal advice.
Well, once you've taken it out of your team, it's out of the team. I don't understand how that would even have any effect, how your team works.
Well, I think the big confusion about this, to kind of go full circle, is really when something, it's that first question I asked Amos when I challenged that someone may not be comfortable talking directly to another member of their team or even to the team as a group, and they choose to involve someone from outside the team. So when do you do that and when do you not do that?
Well, what do you mean outside the team? Do you mean management or HR or some other person?
I think that's a judgment call, and we're not going to come to a definitive thing. It's a very gray area.
Right. If you're not comfortable with talking to that person or resolving it on your team, then take it to the next level. It's not a very difficult rule to figure out.
The thing that is crappy is many HR departments, unfortunately, err on the side of we don't want to get sued, so we'll just fire this person. It's going to happen.
Yeah, but if they fire you, you actually have more recourse if you've done things right.
Do you have evidence that you did things right?
But a lot of people aren't going to fight that. They're just like, oh crap, I got fired by HR. I probably messed up really bad.
Yeah, and the one thing we've kind of done, and I'm going to push back on this whole discussion, is just listening to some of the overtones we've talked about, is we've been saying we escalate it. I actually would encourage us to support the idea of having a self-organizing teams, having people work together. It's really not escalating it to a higher authority. It's really acknowledging that the people on the team itself have realized that they are unable to come to a consensus about what to do, and so they need to get help from outside the team.
Sometimes that happens, but that should be pretty rare.
Well, I guess
usually you escalate outside the team because of a seriousness of it, not because you can't come to some.
And I would say that the first place you escalate outside the team, and this is because I also believe this person should be outside the team, is to your retrospective facilitator. Unless, again, we're at the extreme circumstances, which I don't think on this podcast we're really ready to touch extremes. Like, we're really talking about normal, like, day-to-day, not the, oh crap, someone is looking up the neighbor's dress.
Yeah, but again, real life, if you're running a business, I would hope that you have a harassment policy that has some pretty specific procedures about what to do if you are an employee of an organization and you experience a scenario like that.
So what does that have to do with Agile, by the way?
Because I think that's where I would say that those procedures, which have probably been fleshed out with, counsel and such, probably have more merit than this self-management approach. That's a good discussion. So, I know I've seen people really say that there's been topics that have come up in a retrospective in the team, and people on the team were aware of these policies. And at that point, that topic from that discussion was delegated and effectively shifted over to HR for resolution within that process.
Right. I'm saying that these are basic HR business things that really don't have much to do with Agile. Well, once you've taken it outside of your team, you're not really dealing with Agile anymore. You're just dealing with corporate issues. Yeah,
but to be fair, and I think, Craig, the one thing that I have seen some organizations struggle with is people say, "Yeah, we're self-managing, we're Agile, we don't need to worry about HR, or we don't even need to have an HR training every year to remind people what a hostile work environment is. We can self-manage everything and have retrospectives." And, well, again, that's all fine and dandy until something happens and you have a lawsuit. So if you are in a self-managing environment, I would encourage you to make sure that as a member of a team, your team understands what HR has for these, what I'm going to call these harassment or these harassing scenarios, and what HR provides and requests that they flushed out with however they're running the business. And then everything else goes into really the team. And everyone understands where that boundary is.
So it sounds like you're describing a self-managing company when that's not really a thing that most Agile techniques talk about. They talk about self-managing teams. So if you're a self-managing company, you need to worry about those things. But if you're a self-managing team, you probably work for a company that already has all those things in place. Yeah, well, but again, that's where, real life, over the past few weeks, I've worked with a few teams that, again, they've been in sticky situations because they didn't know what the policies were. And so that's, to me, I think, to your point, Craig, that's if you're a member of an organization or you're a leader of an organization, you need to ensure those policies are defined and well understood, and they're understandable by the people that work there. So they're not documented in legalese, and unless you went to law school, you won't understand. So you need to do that. And then you need to make sure people understand how those policies are there to help people and keep people in the work environment safe. And then ensure that people understand that that's the foundation. And then upon that, they can implement self-management at the team level.
So to wrap up, if it's a serious thing that you were unable to handle yourself, you should approach your HR at your company and know the things that your company says. No matter what, you need to approach HR if this happens. And other than that, Try to talk it out amongst your team through retrospectives and anonymous ways if you must. But if you can, always go directly to the person that is an issue for you. And try to understand why they took the actions they did instead of just accusing of there being a problem.
I think that's good advice. And once again, we are not lawyers. We do not pretend to be lawyers. We are not offering you legal counsel just to cover our butts. But if something has occurred that is serious, you should escalate that up through your management chain.
I did play a lawyer in a play in 5th grade.
That doesn't count.
Oh.
But it's a nice try.
Well, I was going to do brain surgery later on tonight, but I guess I'll skip it since
you must
I
have
only played a doctor in a play once.
You must have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. All right, guys, let's do our picks.
This week's hottest picks.
And tonight we're going to start with Craig. Craig, what's your pick?
All right. My pick is noise-canceling headphones. Specifically, I bought a pair of Parrot Zic headphones. These are pretty much the maybe most expensive or definitely most featureful noise-canceling headphones. They're also Bluetooth. You can plug them in and not use the Bluetooth, which I'm using today for the first time on a podcast. The noise canceling is great for being on a plane or cutting the grass. So I've really enjoyed being able to cut the grass, listen to a podcast.
Wow. I mean, it really cuts down like lawnmower noise.
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't even have to have it all cranked all the way up, and I can hear what people are saying.
I was at Craig's house the other day and tried those things on, and it was pretty amazing. He's like, hit the button, and I hit the button, and it like the room went silent. But when Craig talked, it made noise. I was like, I didn't realize how much noise was in this room until I put these on.
Very cool. Of course, you wouldn't probably want to use those on an Agile team. You know, you'd miss out on all the rich conversation going on.
You can still hear people talk.
Yeah, you can kind of hear people talk. Also, if you work from home and do remote pairing, they're good for that.
Very good. All right, Amos, what are your picks tonight?
I actually am going against my better judgment and having 3 picks instead of my normal 1 to 2. But one of them is kind of crazy. In Curses, if anybody knows what that is, it's a graphics library for the console. I picked In Curses. It's available in a lot of languages, and I picked it because retro's cool, right? That's at least what I hear. And it's really neat to try to take an application and give it a what I will call a big boy GUI, which is like a really nice, maybe even 3D GUI, and then try to hook in an In Curses GUI to it too, just for fun, like a small app. Like if you want to build Tetris, is what I've been playing with lately, and to see if you can really decouple your layers enough that you could just switch the view out like that. My second pick is Learn Haskell for Great Good, or Learn You Haskell for Great Good. It's a really interesting book. I've been reading it. I've played with Haskell on and off for a while, and I have a problem with functional languages where I feel that all the examples are like, here's how you sort a list of numbers, but I can't ever find anything that has good examples. Everything makes a functional language look like a toy, and I think that this book does a really good job of moving beyond that a little bit. And then also in the same vein is Land of Lisp, which is a really great book if you want to learn Lisp, and you get to do so by creating some little games to play.
All right. Good picks, Amos. Jason, what are your picks tonight?
Okay, so inspired by our lively discussion this evening, I have a challenge for everyone out there in this Agile Life land. I will want to challenge you, including my 3 co-hosts tonight, to go read The No Asshole Rule by Rob Sutton. This is a book that talks about effectively what the title says in the workplace, and it talks about ways to have a civilized workplace. I guarantee you that if you have been on a self-managing team and or just worked in any environment out there that's not a kindergarten classroom, you probably have experienced things that are discussed in this book. So you will find it interesting. You might even find it describing things that you have done. And so it's a little bit of a reality check. So I would highly recommend it. It's a pretty interesting read. I know a couple organizations have actually done a book club about it to kind of confront the discussion about respect in the workplace. So people read the book, you do a book club in your office, and you'll have some very thought-provoking discussions. So highly recommended book, The No Asshole Rule. The other one I'll plug, second pick for tonight, is later in September 2014, actually on Friday, September 26th. I've been invited to do a lunch and learn in St. Louis. It's in the St. Louis metro area, and it's a visual workshop about the perfect user story. So we're going to take many of the things that we've discussed on This Agile Life about user stories, and we're going to render them into a picture that we will draw live at a lunch session. So we'll have a link to the Evite invitation in the show notes. So if you're hear this in September of 2014 and you're in St. Louis, join us for lunch on Friday, September 26th, 2014. You going to show up, Amos?
I've RSVP'd. I'm going to try to come heckle.
Oh, come heckle. It will be fun, Amos. So please bring your paper so you can draw with me. Participation is encouraged.
I love to participate.
Oh, good. Those are my 2 picks.
Very good. Thanks. Okay, my picks tonight, we got a couple. First one is Text Expander. I use Text Expander on the Mac from Smile Software. I like it because, well, I use it for a couple of things. And Craig, you're probably not going to like this because at one point you shared out all of your Git aliases and whatnot, which I used, but then I realized that those don't follow me around very well. And my Text Expander stuff kind of follows me around a little bit better when I go from my Mac at home to my Mac at work, and I can use it for other things. So I also use it for stuff like some pre-formatted email responses that I use, and filling in some forms and some other things. So there's Text Expander for the Mac from Smile Software, and then if you're not a Mac person, there's also something called Phrase Express, which is a text expander-like utility for Windows. So you can check that pick out in the show notes. Also, I had a presentation accepted for Agile DC, which is going to be held, I think, on... Ooh, I think that was applause, or...
it was attempting to be applause.
Very, very, very interesting, sort of applause from Amos there. So my presentation is on coaching affinity estimation. I'll be giving it at the one-day Agile DC conference, October 21st in the DC area. So if you're in that area or planning to be there, say hi, check it out, stop by. I'll have some This Agile Life stickers to hand out.
Are we going to record at this conference?
I'm not planning on doing any live recording of an episode at Agile DC. It's a real pain for me to haul around all the recording equipment.
Well, you can invite me. I'll haul it for you.
That sounds great. All right, guys. Well, that's all we have time for today. Check out thisagilelife.com for these show notes and for all of our past episodes. Thanks for listening and keep living this Agile life.
This Agile Life is brought to you by a community of Agile developers and coaches aspiring to spread the word about this groundbreaking approach to software development. Join us at thisagilelife.com/community.